just briefly, you heard 1871, 300 companies, all startups, about 1,000 people a day. We have about 100,000 square feet of space, and all we do is build new businesses. And it couldn't be a more exciting place. I've spent a number of years, as you heard, doing a little bit of everything. But what's so exciting about 1871 is this idea of disruption and how we're changing traditional organizations in so many different ways. Here's a little picture of what's going on. And as I say, one of the things that it drives this whole adventure is passion and the desire of these new generations to do things in different ways, but also it's not about making money as much as it's about making a difference, and that's really what has been extraordinary. So we have all kinds of businesses. I don't know if Dave Tolmay made it in here. He's one of our directors and has been a tremendous help for the organization. But let me just talk about entrepreneurs as you start, your couple of days. As you start this process rolling forward, I want you to understand about entrepreneurs. And I also want to actually give you a little bit of a cookbook. For 10 years before I had this job, I was actually a series of college professors, and all I can say is the entrepreneurs listen even less than my students did, or as President Clinton was fond of saying, it's like working in the White House is like working in a cemetery. There's a lot of people under you, but no one listens. And so very much the same sort of situation that I have to deal with. But here's an amazing thing, and this is what's so important about the opportunities that you have in these new and emerging economies. I mean, I just met with the complete senior government tier of Brazil, and they told me an amazing thing. Brazil is basically 1 year behind the United States. There's about 75 million people on Facebook, and having a culture and a whole economy that's really thriving, but that's a year behind the United States. Every U.S. business that goes down there is like they have a crystal ball. It's like, well, why don't we do this? And everybody says, wow, that's the most amazing thing. Well, of course, we've been doing it for a year in the United States. So the other thing, though, that you discover is that if you don't know any better, as we say all the time about entrepreneurs, if we knew how long or how hard this process was going to be, no one would ever start out on this path. But the fact is that it's that lack of knowledge and that lack of knowledge about what you can't do that makes it so exciting to look at change. And so one of the other things that's really important is not to settle and sort of not to compromise your dreams. And what we say all the time is there is a best seat in the house, there is a best opportunity, and as Michael Jordan used to say, known worldwide, he misses 100% of the shots that he didn't take. And so we figure you might as well shoot for the stars. Over time, some of these things won't work out for you, but that's not where we want to start, and that's not the culture that we want to build. So let me tell you a little bit about entrepreneurs. They sort of look at things that have existed for a zillion years, and they see different solutions. And some of them are really sophisticated young people, and some of them are a little more advanced. And this is really one of my favorite. I love her pearls in particular. So this is a story about a woman who was from Connecticut but appeared at a bank in New York and said she was leaving town for a week on a cruise, and she wondered if the bank could lend her $10,000 for the trip. And the bank was relatively polite. I mean, she was a very distinguished-looking woman. But they said, frankly, we don't know you from Adam, and so it would be really unrealistic to think that we would lend you $10,000. She said, well, I do have collateral. I have my rolls outside, and it's worth at least, $250,000. And could I leave it with you for a week? And would that make you comfortable? Here are the keys. And so the guy went to see his manager and said, okay, that's pretty good collateral. So we'll keep it for a week. And a week goes by, and she comes back and says, I'd like to repay the loan. And he says the interest was $6.10. And he says, but let me ask you this. We checked you out with your bank in Connecticut, and it turned out that you're a very well-established person. And they would have lent you, a considerable sum more than the $10,000. And she said, but where can you park a car in New York for a week for $6.10? And so again, sometimes entrepreneurs look at the exact same situation and they have a much better answer, okay? And so now, at the same time, we're also very, very realistic. And so we tell these kids that life isn't fair, that it's not always going to work out, but it's going to depend on your effort. And it's all really and truly within your hands. And so this idea, this ability to make change happen is what's so totally exciting. And we have a very simple strategy at 1871. And it's not about wishing, it's about working. And that idea that you get what you dedicate yourself to and what you work hard for is really the culture that we work on all the time. And here's another sort of interesting thing. We live in a time when the millennials have a lot of good things going for them, and they also have a sense of entitlement that you have to beat out of them with a stick, okay? So we've said that talent is great. We've said that creativity is important. But the people who will ultimately and consistently succeed are the people that work the hardest. And so this culture of work is really very paramount to everything that we're involved in. It says basically, if you can't read it, it's great to be lucky, but it helps to work 90 hours a week in order to be even super lucky. So one of the other things that we do is we don't take no for an answer. This doesn't mean that we're unrealistic. This doesn't mean that we don't understand, that you can't do everything. But if you let other people sort of tell you what you can't do, if you let them compromise your dreams, then you're not going anywhere. And so we have an expression, we have a lot of expressions, but one is that it's only no for now. And that means that there's always another opportunity, there's another pitch, there's another presentation. Not everything happens overnight. One of the ideas in a lot of what we do is people come in and they have a crystal clear vision of where they're headed. They don't have an appreciation for the time that it may take and the path and how convoluted the path may be. So we say all the time, don't mistake a clear view for a short distance. And this is important too, because a lot of what you have heard tonight and a lot of what you'll hear tomorrow about building foundations, 40 years is an enormous time and 40 more are forthcoming. And so, tonight I just wanted to share with you sort of a recipe and some of the ideas that we think are really important. It's great to look backwards. It's totally great to look backwards. But in the times that we face today, a lot of change is not evolutionary. It's not sort of going to get better. It's completely explosive. It's revolutionary. It's disruptive. And so in times of this kind of rapid change, experience is okay, it's helpful, but it's not enough when you go forward. You really need vision. You really need tools. And we'll talk about that, because if you don't do that complete job, it's great to give people a vision of the future, but if you don't give them the tools and permit them to be successful, then it doesn't do any good. In fact, it's worse, because you've set expectations that are unrealistic. And I'll only be talking for about an hour and a half more. Now, see, that's a case of setting the right expectation, and then how surprised you'll be that I'm done in a few minutes. Anyway, so here's another thing that we've learned, and that is that entrepreneurs meet frustration and problems and difficulties all the time. What they do when that happens is they certainly are frustrated, but they've figured out that if you double your effort, if you double down, you're more likely to be successful. And so they put their head down and they discover this really interesting thing, that if you're focused and if you're really paying attention, that those things that we call obstacles just sort of disappear. They get out of the way because you're creating momentum and you're creating energy. And that's what leadership is all about. Leadership is totally a performance art. It's totally about setting an example every single day. When times are tough, we sometimes say our people go out all day long and they come back and we have to sort of grab them by the thumb and reinflate them, like a punching bag, because of the difficulty of some of the things that are going on. That's okay. It's just part of the process. Here's another thing that we're trying to explain, and it's equally significant, and that is that we take it on ourselves. We take responsibility. We take this accountability. We think it's very easy to find explanations and excuses. And, we're looking for people who sort of get up and get out there and do these things. And it won't always work, but it will never work if you don't try. And so here's a really interesting thing. Here's something that we've really found, and that is that if you want to be action-oriented, if you want to have this responsibility and take this on, you can't give up the ability to make change. You really can't. You really have to say, it's within my power. It's not necessarily my power to always succeed, but it's in my power to try. And that's what's so exciting about being surrounded by entrepreneurs and to see the kind of change that's going on. We have a very difficult job as well. We have a number of people who come to us, and you heard about the process and the sort of the tear-jerking process of only being able to give scholarships to some of the students. We have a different job, and ours is to sometimes tell our young entrepreneurs who are every bit enthusiastic and eager that their babies are ugly. And that's not an easy message to tell them, okay? But that's the fair thing to say, and that's the right thing to say. And what's so great about this community that we have of thousands of people every week is the Hotel California. And the Hotel California, as you know from the Eagles, you can check in, but you can never leave. So when we tell these people that their particular idea, their vision isn't great, they should think about opportunity costs, they should think about doing something else, they don't leave, they attach themselves to a better idea. And this is another part of this process that's really extraordinary because it's very Darwinian, but it's also very powerful. It tells you that you've constructed a community that's only going to continue to build and to thrive. And so that's our goal. Our goal is to be fair. Our goal, we often say, is to be their first employer, to be their parents in a way, but also to encourage them to get better all the time. So we're not really sympathetic. We understand that life is tough, but we think of it as sort of like Chinese food, although I guess there must be a politically correct way to say that. So just think of a low-calorie meal without any specific attribution. But we want to take action, and so we don't, we're not passive. And you heard about getting started in this idea of just putting it out there. And by the way, that's how it goes. If you don't get started, there's never a perfect time. And I'll just sort of share with you the rules about that. So we even understand the idea of necessary evils, but that doesn't mean that we accept them. That just means that they are temporary provisions. They're things that we're going to live with, but that doesn't mean that we're ever going to lose sight of the right way and the important way and the sort of the morally correct way to do some of these things. And so we've eliminated another phrase, and this is something you should think about with your kids, okay? We don't use the phrase, I don't know anymore, because it used to mean you were ignorant. Now it means you're lazy. And the reason it means you're lazy is because the information, the tools, the knowledge is out there. And so we take it as an insult. Somebody comes to a meeting and they're not prepared. They say, I don't know. That doesn't mean that they haven't, sort of wanted to help out. It means they didn't do their homework. They didn't take the time. They didn't prepare. And so they've wasted everybody's time. And this is how cultures evolve. This is how sort of leadership manifests itself with all kinds of different people with different expectations and different paths. And, at 1871, we have 18-year-olds and we have 58-year-olds and we have everything in between because the population of people that want to change their lives has no bounds and it has no specific, different ways of doing things. So here's some good news. In the old days, not so long ago, we were all confronted with these ugly choices, okay? And these ugly choices were, if you're building something, it can be cheap, it can be on time, it could be straight. You can have any of the two, you can never have all three. Today, the cost of technology is so much less expensive. The availability of digital resources is so much more powerful. The whole world is available to us. We live in a world that's transparent in new ways, and that's created enormous advantages with respect to measurement and accountability. And so what we're able to say today is we don't have to make bad choices. We don't have to evaluate either or equations. And when somebody comes and says, let's start down that slippery slope, let's settle for a little less than we should, what we say is that's a bad choice. And more than that, it's a failure on their part to think creatively. It doesn't mean that there's not a solution. It means you didn't look long enough and hard enough to find the right way to do it, the way that can accommodate all of those interests. And that's possible today. That's possible because of technology. It's possible because of programs that provide resources. It's possible just because we have new tools that just never existed before, and they're really, really revolutionary. So 5 quick things as you go into and as you build the way that you understand everything that this organization does. I just want to sort of say basically the following. Number 1, it's really important to have a simple story. You know, there's a lot of complexity to every business and to everything, but it all comes down to something that's very, very simple. And basically it's who are we and where are we going? Because people don't, like to go there by themselves, wherever that is. They like company. It's the nature of social beings. And why are we doing it? So a simple story, the ability to express it ad nauseum or in an elevator is really important. And it tells you that you've solved another problem, which is people can be a mile wide and an inch deep, but that's never a formula for success. What's success is focus and attention and trying to put all of the wood behind a single arrowhead. That's what we try to do all the time. So it helps also to do another thing. It helps to tell people not just the truth, but to tell them what is expected of them. And it's not all happy news. It's sacrifice. It's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of tears. But at the end, it's worth doing. If it's not worth doing, you should be doing something else. And so we like that. We tell the truth. We believe that you can live in a very simple way, and that is to say what you think and to live up to what you say and to execute that way every single day. So that's number 1, which is make it simple, make it clear, make sure everybody understands it and that they live it every single day. Number 2 is everything can get better. We don't believe in legal restrictions, trademarks, intellectual property. We believe in speed and iteration, that everything can be improved if you apply yourself. And so we never settle. We basically continue to move forward. And frankly, if you don't do it in your methodology and the tools that you use, then someone will come along tomorrow and do it better and differently and roll right over you. And so to understand the nature of this change is really to understand that ask yourself the last time you sent a fax, and you'll start to understand how the world changes. And believe me, it continues to change every single day. And what's great is to have kids come in who don't know any better and say, by the way, I've reinvented the automotive industry, or I've changed the airline business, and you know what? They're doing it. It's actually happening. And so number 2 is to understand that the expectations of everyone, donors, your clients, everyone's expectations are progressive. Yesterday's miracles are today's so what. So you have to keep running. It's like a steamroller. On any given day, you could outrun it. If you sit down or you try to rest, it rolls right over you. And so number 3 is to get started. And when we say this, what we mean very simply is you can't wait. It's, we don't believe in sort of postponed perfection. We actually believe that you have to get started and grow and understand that if you have to meet every single objection, if you have to wait till you have a perfect team, if you have to wait till everything is ideal, then you may never get started. And so the second part of that is to understand that nothing is fully grown on day 1. And so when you get this momentum going, you attract talent. You attract people. You encourage people to be part of the solution. And it's that sucking of people in, I say that in a loving way, and sort of engaging them that really gives you the power of the organization. It's not limited to just some leaders, because these organizations really grow by a multiplier effect. They grow by the combined effort of a tremendous number of people who care about these things. And here's what, we have been in the film business. One of my many, adventures was in the film business. And what we used to say about the film business was basically this, that a script, a screenplay, got the movie made, it got the movie funded, but it was never what ended up on the screen. And that's the nature of businesses as well. And when you make a plan and the day you write it down, it's old and it's history and it's out of date. And you need to understand the constant change is part of the process of doing this really well. Now, I don't know about you, but in the entire history of the Academy Awards, this never happened. Nobody ever came in and said, let's go see that film. They brought it in for about $8 under budget. That's not the measurement, okay? So plans, budgets, business plans, everything that you put down on paper is great that day, And what the best and most powerful thing it can be is a guide to measure how the circumstances have changed around it. And what you want to do is always have a consistent vision, and you want to be ironclad on the vision and what you're trying to accomplish, and flexible on the details, because nobody has a crystal ball and nobody can really do this. So we believe in the idea of successive approximation. It's the idea that instead of waiting, we can approach perfection all the time. And it's a little bit like ironing. Now, I don't know, I've never ironed anything, but they tell me that you go back over and over it a few times and it gets a little better and a little smoother, and I believe that, okay? So we have the same process. We have a process that's really very simple, and it's an iterative process. We try something. We measure how it worked. We modify it. We react to it, and then we do it again. And we do it until our faces fall off, because it's a never-ending process, and that's just how this whole business operates. And then lastly, don't stick to your plan too long, but stick to your guns. And this is just what I said before, which is there are plans, there are goals, there are objectives, but the real important thing to understand is where are you headed, okay? And some people get so wrapped up in numbers and in projections and things like that that they lose sight of the facts and they lose sight of the mission. And so you should understand that a business plan is great, a strategy is great, but those are only things that get you started. And ultimately, it comes down to people. You know, one of the great, curses of the world is Excel, because you can actually make projections of anything forever for the rest of our lives. And trees apparently still don't grow to the sky, but Excel spreadsheets will, provide you infinite returns. It's simply a cell adjustment. But in any event, look, you're going to face a lot of change. Things are going to get better. Things are going to be really interesting. You can't make the world conform to you, but you can build a learning organization, and you can build a place where you adapt to what's going on out there. And this idea of consistency is also, one of these hobgoblins, as they say. And it means that you're not learning. If you're trying to just do what you set out to do, that's not enough. It's not enough today. You should have a higher expectation that you're going to constantly get better. And that's a really critical thing to understand. So as I said, our goal is to be very clear. We believe in the vision, whatever the vision is, whatever the mission is, whatever the results are. We're very flexible about the details, and we don't apologize for changing our minds. Steve Jobs was an amazing leader. He was an even better liar. And the way he lied was always the same way. It was very interesting. When he would change his mind, he would have like complete amnesia. And he would say, oh no, I didn't say that. We weren't planning to do that. We never intended to do that. And all the people sitting around were like, what is he talking about? Just a week ago we were heading in this direction. And so ultimately he would sort of wink and he would say, here's what's going on. I'm doing what's right for the business today. That's the only standard that you can have. It's not, I'm doing what I wrote down a year ago. It's not what I hope to do in 5 years. It's real time. That's the world we live in, and that's the things that we have to do. We have to do what's right and best for the business today. And so, lastly, I want to talk about people. People are the goal. People are the entire and complete answer to what's going on. We're surrounded by technicians and software designers and developers. They don't necessarily believe in bathing. I think that's okay. They love a lot of pizza, and basically that's fine too. And they like to work at night, all right? All of these things lead you to the same conclusion, that if you want to build a powerful organization, you have to make room for people. And you have to understand that talent is a package deal, and not every aspect, not every edge is smooth. And making room for those people is important. The other thing that you need to understand is what that noted philosopher Willie Sutton said. Now, everybody knows what Willie Sutton said. Number one was, when he was asked, why do you rob banks? He said, because that's where the money is, okay? But this was the second thing he said about his team, and this is really instructive for new businesses, but for every business as well. And that is, he said, look, I don't expect every member of my team to love everybody on the team. I don't expect this to be a kumbaya thing where we all knit and then go bowling every Thursday night. I just want them to do their jobs. And that's important too, because to bring in diverse people and to make room for people and to attract those talents, you have to understand that they're broader than simply one idea An entrepreneur's worst mistake is to hire a whole bunch of people that look like him or her, because that's not how organizations grow and bring in talent. And so when I talk about people, I want you to understand, my entire life is about technology, and I say all the time, technology won't get us there. What gets you there are passionate, trained, committed, dedicated people. Technology becomes a commodity. Eventually it'll be cheap, it'll be available to all of us. That's how it works. There'll be something new that'll come along, but the people that drive your organizations will never be outgrown, they'll never be outmoded, they'll never be less expensive, and they'll never be more valuable. And so, in talking about opportunity, I just want to say three things that I mentioned before. None of these things are about money. They're about making a difference. You can have a dream, but if your dream is just about making money or about big cars or about lifestyle, that's not going to get you there. It's just too hard to do this. But if you want to make a difference, then you discover that everything else flows from that. So that's number one. Number two is what's really exciting is that basically we know that you can only lead people in a certain way, and that's by showing them a vision and a path, how to get there. And that's really critical too. And then sort of the last thing, I don't know if it's clearer on your slide than it is on mine, but we want to get people bought in. We want to make people a part of this process. And the last thing that I would say is that this is exactly what opportunity does. If you give people a dream, but you don't give them the tools and the resources to succeed, not every time, but to try and to have a shot at it, then all you build is frustration, and it's a sort of a numbing thing. And so what's great about this is the understanding that it can be small and it can be modest, but it's a start. And to give people those tools, to give people those resources, and then to build from there is how we're going to change the world. So opportunity does exactly that. They provide financial services. They create jobs. They create training and education, mentoring, and most of all, they build community. And as you heard, this idea of learning groups and trust circles and things like that, these support organizations are invaluable. You know, when you're an entrepreneur and you're in the basement somewhere, it's very lonely. What we built in creating the community that we have built is a supportive environment where you can succeed, and even if you don't succeed, you have a safety net under you because you have other people that are going through exactly the same thing. And so that's what's so exciting about entrepreneurs, and thank you very much for being here. I want to say one last thing, which is that money matters, but metrics matter more. And so what's so great in the world we live in is transparency, measurement. And so this is a fair expectation. And you should be not only sort of promoting this, but this is part of the culture that's new. And that is that we're all accountable, and we've got the ability today that we never had before. We can tell there was a great advertising guy named John Wanamaker, and his great quote was that half of the money he spent on advertising for his company was wasted. He just didn't know which half it was, okay? And so here's the deal today. We can use marketing dollars, we can use resources, we can use digital media, and we can measure the results in ways that never existed before. And that's exciting because that permits us to demonstrate to the people that are giving us support and their money and their treasure and their time and their resources that we're making a difference. And nothing really matters more than that. And as I say, it's not about comfort, it's not about luxury, it's about this amazing privilege that every day you get up and go someplace where you can be enthusiastic and excited about what you're doing. And I wish you all the best, and thank you very much.